You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is The Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to The Midnight Mystery. This episode is called The Midnight Channel. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. For today's episode, we have all three of the latest episodes combined into one special. The Last Stop, The Midnight Channel, and The Treehouse. Get ready to experience the Midnight Mystery. It was nearing midnight when my car, a 1997 beaten-up Oldsmobile, gave out on the lonesome stretches of Route 66. Its strained groans echoed in the stillness of the desert, a symphony of despair that rattled my nerves. Not another soul in sight. The dying remnants of my cell battery found no signal. The only light I could see came from a distant, dilapidated gas station. The Last Stop, its rusted sign read. Leaving my car behind, I trudged to the station under the cold, judgmental gaze of the stars. The air tasted like dust and old fear. A strange neon sign flickered in the window. Open 24/7. My heart sank at the sight of the lonely clerk in the station's convenience store. His name tag read Luke. He had pale skin that the faint fluorescent lights rendered almost blue. Sharp, piercing blue eyes gazed at me from behind thick spectacles, the glint in them evoking a sense of unease. A sly smile played on his thin lips, a smile that promised both solace and danger. "Car trouble?" he asked, his voice smoother than the aged whiskey lining the back shelf. I nodded, explaining the details of my predicament. He leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. "I can help you," he said, the smile never leaving his face. "But everything comes at a price. Desperation can drive a man to do many things. Fear, even more so." I asked him what he needed. "A simple trade," Luke proposed, reaching under the counter to produce an old brass key. "This will start any car, anywhere, anytime. In exchange, I'll need something of yours. Something personal." Bewildered, I asked him what he meant. His grin widened. "Your most cherished memory," he said. A chill ran down my spine. This was absurd, a trick or an elaborate prank. But those knowing eyes, full of ageless wisdom and a hint of malevolent joy, told a different story. "What will you do with it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Trade secrets," he winked. "Will you take the deal?" My thoughts pondered on my daughter, my little girl's first steps, her cobalt blue eyes wide with innocent wonder, her tiny fingers clutching a sun-bleached teddy bear. It was as if a sunbeam had been captured within those four walls, casting out any hint of darkness with her vibrant laughter. It was pure, untouched joy, the kind that only an innocent child can radiate. But then, my thoughts shifted to the harsh reality outside, the merciless desert night that offered no refuge. My car, now nothing more than an immobile hunk of metal in the middle of nowhere. My phone, its battery life sapped away like my hopes of a quick rescue. The bleak, desolate landscape echoed the growing despair in my heart. I was all alone, and for miles and miles that stretched before me, there was not a single hint of civilization. Two paths lay before me, to keep my cherished memory and possibly face the cold desert night, or trade it away for my safety. But as a father, I had sworn to protect my child, and to do so, I needed to get back to her. I needed to face the nightmares of today to ensure her dreams of tomorrow. I made my choice. With a deep breath, I took one last look into the depths of Luke's eyes, where the shimmering blue promised the comfort of forgotten oblivion. There was a pang in my heart, a tear in the fabric of my existence as I agreed to his deal. "Take it," I said, my voice echoing with the gravity of my decision. "Take the memory." As I reached out to shake Luke's icy hand, a strange sense of dread overcame me. The coldness seeping from his palm wasn't the kind brought by weather or sickness. It was as if his touch was forged in the shadows, untouched by the warmth of life. Electric pain shot through my head. It felt as though my skull was being split open, the agony so pure and intense that I buckled to my knees. Luke's cackling laughter echoed around me, filling my senses as I clenched my teeth against the pain. I felt like I was falling, tumbling into an abyss as a torrent of images flooded my mind. My little girl's bright eyes, her toddling steps, her infectious laughter. And then, as quickly as it came, the pain subsided. I opened my eyes, panting heavily. The neon lights of the gas station were now too bright, too real. Luke was standing before me, his grin wider than before, the brass key glinting in his hand. But within me, something had changed. There was an emptiness where a treasured memory used to reside. A gaping hole in my heart, where there once was a warmth, a joy so profound it made life worth living. The memory of my daughter taking her first steps. It was gone. The laughter, the proud sense of fatherhood, the pure joy of the moment, erased as if it had never existed. With a hollow feeling gnawing at my chest, I slowly rose to my feet and took the key. Its brass was cold against my skin, an alien object that came at too high a price. The transaction was over. The deal was sealed. But as I turned to leave, Luke's voice stopped me. His words slithered in the silence, a sinister whisper that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Remember," he said, his grin splitting his face into a grotesque mask of delight. "The devil's in the details." My car roared to life as the brass key turned in the ignition. The engine purred, the warmth from the vents dispelling the cold that had seeped into my bones. As promised, Luke's key had breathed life back into my car, a miracle born of a devil's deal. With a heavy heart, I drove off under the indigo sky. Its endless expanse seemed to mirror my growing despair, the stars twinkling like distant judgmental eyes. The gas station, the last stop, dwindled in my rearview mirror, a beacon of dread growing smaller and smaller until it was no more than a tiny speck. Then it disappeared entirely, swallowed by the consuming darkness of the desert night. As the miles rolled on beneath my tires, the loss of my precious memory gnawed at me, a gaping wound that refused to heal. Each mile marker I passed was a reminder of my sacrifice, the trade I had made with the devil at the crossroads. I could almost hear the echoes of my little girl's laughter, now lost to me forever. The sweet memory, now erased, of her small figure toddling towards me on unsteady legs. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the pain in my heart raw and piercing. But as the harsh reality of my choice sank in, something else made me shudder. It was the chilling realization that I had left my old life behind at that gas station, along with my most cherished memory. I was no longer the same man who had broken down in the middle of nowhere. The innocence of faith in a fair world had been ripped away from me, replaced by a stark understanding of the ruthlessness of fate. The remainder of the drive home was a blur. The world outside seemed to move in a surreal, slow motion. My heart pounded with anticipation and guilt with each passing mile. The house came into view just as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows and bathing everything in a soft golden glow. My daughter, my little angel, was sitting on the front steps, her small form hunched over a coloring book. Seeing her alive and well, oblivious to the sacrifice I had made for her, filled me with a strange mix of relief and anguish. I approached her slowly, each step heavier than the last. She looked up at me, her blue eyes sparkling with innocence and love. A wave of affection washed over me, so strong it nearly brought me to my knees, but beneath it lurked a darker undercurrent, a rising tide of guilt and fear, a silent reminder of the pact I had made. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, rushing into my arms. I hugged her tight, inhaling the sweet scent of her hair, trying to etch this moment deep into my heart. "Hey, princess," I murmured, forcing a smile onto my face. A heavy silence hung in the air as I led her inside. The house felt different, as if the walls themselves were aware of the abhorrent act I was about to commit. Tucking her into bed that night was the hardest thing I had ever done. Each of her sleepy yawns, her soft sighs, her trusting gaze, they were daggers stabbing at my conscience. Once she was asleep, I stood by her bed, watching her peaceful face. The room was filled with an eerie calm. The only sound was the steady rhythm of her breath and the deafening thump of my own heartbeat. I took a deep breath, reaching under the bed to pull out a box that hadn't been opened in years. It contained a relic from my past life, an old hunting knife my father had given me. Its weight felt strange and menacing in my hand. As I loomed over her, my hand trembling with the weight of the blade, my mind was filled with chaos. But amidst the turmoil, a single lucid thought emerged. I had sealed my fate at the gas station. Now it was time to fulfill the devil's due. I made my choice. The final echo of Luke's words chilled me to the bone. The devil was indeed in the details, and I was about to find out what those details truly entailed. I'm sorry, darling. Hope you enjoyed the last stop. Up next is the Midnight Channel. Like many insomniacs, the low hum of late-night television often kept me company during those elongated, sleep-deprived hours. I would lie on my threadbare couch, engulfed by the faint, iridescent glow of the screen, my mind slowly being sedated by the droning voices of infomercial presenters or the rehearsed laughter of sitcom reruns. It was a numbing routine, one I clung to like a life raft in a tumultuous sea of insomnia. However, last Tuesday, as the night was at its darkest and the silence outside seemed almost suffocating, my restless channel surfing led me to a strange discovery. Hidden amongst the obscure corners of my cable channels, there was something that lay outside the realm of usual late-night broadcasts. Channel 0, it was named, denoted as Broadcasting Service on my cable guide. An odd title for a station that only appeared to exist at the stroke of midnight, remaining eerily static at all other times. Its mere existence was a peculiarity, one that piqued my curiosity and beckoned me to venture into this unknown broadcast. Summoning my courage, I decided to tune in. The screen responded with a faint flicker, a pulse-like beat as though it were coming to life. Then the television bathed the room in a bleak monochrome, casting long shadows that danced on my living room walls. It showcased a view of a sparsely furnished room, the footage grainy and tinged with a vintage aesthetic reminiscent of old horror movies. At first, I was by its peculiar charm, the way the stark shadows played with the mundane objects, turning them into ominous silhouettes. It felt as though I had discovered a hidden portal, a looking glass that peered into another world from another time. However, as I continued watching, a sense of unease slowly crept into me. Something about the broadcast seemed off. There was a chilling familiarity to the room on the screen, a familiarity that was hard to ignore. Yet, I couldn't quite put my finger on what was causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. The camera swept across the room with an unsettling slowness, the motion painting a spine-chilling familiarity on the screen. My eyes followed its path, soaking in every detail with increasing dread. As it focused on a framed picture that hung lopsidedly on the wall, my heart hammered against my chest in terrified recognition. The photo was undeniably mine, a candid moment captured during a family get-together from years ago. I was staring at my own living room, being broadcast live on this mysterious Channel 0. My sanctuary, my privacy, was being invaded by unseen eyes and put on display for reasons I couldn't fathom. Sweat broke out on my forehead, a chill creeping up my spine. My mind spiraled into a whirlwind of thoughts. Was this a twisted joke? A perverse game designed to terrify and torment? In desperation, I flipped through the other channels, hoping to find anything that would explain this chilling anomaly. But every other channel carried on with their regular programming, utterly oblivious to the horror I was experiencing. Only Channel 0 showcased the unnerving spectacle of my violated sanctuary. As the nights dragged on, the situation grew increasingly dire. The channel's invasive lens began probing deeper into my life, its focus shifting to even more personal spaces within my home. It silently slithered through the corridors, into the kitchen where I had shared meals with loved ones, into my office where I worked tirelessly on countless projects, and finally, it penetrated my most private space, my bedroom. There it was, an image of myself, asleep and vulnerable, displayed on the screen. My peaceful, oblivious countenance starkly contrasted with the wave of terror coursing through me. It was a horrifying sight, like watching a nightmare unfold in real time. Each broadcast was painfully current, an unending live stream of my life from an intrusive, unwanted observer. Every night, the broadcasts would focus on me, silently documenting my life and casting a sinister shadow over what once felt safe. My sense of security was shattered, replaced with a lingering fear that made every room feel hostile, every shadow a lurking threat. And through it all, Channel 0 continued its relentless vigil, its silent intrusion into my life a constant, terrifying reminder of my helplessness. In desperation, I turned to the authorities, pleading with them to search my home for any hidden surveillance equipment. Their diligent sweep of my property, however, found no evidence of intrusion or covert monitoring. I even approached the cable company, only to be met with perplexed stares when I mentioned Channel Zero. It was as if I was speaking of a phantom channel, something that existed only within my television and nowhere else. To them, my frantic pleas were nothing more than the ramblings of a man consumed by paranoia. One particularly chilling night, the broadcast showed nothing more than an empty corner of my living room, the grayscale footage filled with an oppressive sense of anticipation. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as a shadowy figure gradually coalesced from the formless static on the screen. It stood there, an imposing silhouette in the dimly lit room, its focus seemingly fixed on the camera. A sense of dread washed over me as I realized it was not just looking at the camera, but through it, at me. Frozen in terror, my gaze remained locked on the screen. The figure moved then, not with the jerkiness of human motion, but with a smooth, predatory glide. It moved towards the camera, its destination apparent, my bedroom. The screen was suddenly swallowed by darkness. The abrupt change was jarring, a moment of void filled with silent terror. When the image returned, it was a live feed from my bedroom. I could see myself on the screen, sleeping blissfully unaware of the sinister presence that had invaded my sanctuary. I watched in cold terror as the shadowy figure loomed over my sleeping form. In a fit of fear and anger, I hurled the remote at the television. The screen exploded into a shower of sparks and shards, casting erratic shadows across the room. My home, once a place of comfort and safety, had been violated and turned into a stage for a terrifying reality show, starring me, watched by unseen eyes. I made a decision then. I wouldn't stay a minute longer in that house. Grabbing a bag, I threw in some essentials, my hands trembling and my mind racing. Leaving behind a lifetime of memories in that house wasn't easy, but the alternative was unthinkable. I slipped out under the cover of darkness, the echo of my own hurried footsteps a stark contrast to the serene night. The house loomed in my rearview mirror as I drove away, an embodiment of invaded privacy and dread. A shiver ran down my spine as I thought about Channel Zero and the unseen audience I had left behind. The shadows seemed darker, the night quieter, and in that moment, I knew my ordeal was far from over. That was a week ago. Now, I'm in a small motel at the edge of the city. There's no television here, and I prefer it that way. The police still haven't found any evidence, but something changed last night. I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "See you at midnight, Channel Zero." I wish I could tell you that I'm brave, that I'll fight this, but I'm terrified. There's a clock in this room, and it's ticking towards midnight. The silence of the motel room is deafening, and the glow of the neon sign outside my window is my only companion. The hours pass slowly and all I can do is wait. Hope you enjoyed the Midnight Channel. Up next is my personal favorite, The Treehouse. When we were kids, growing up in the small town of Harvest Ridge, we found a treehouse. It sat shrouded in the heart of the forest that our parents had always warned us about, the Whispering Woods. Our gang, consisting of me, Maddie, Sarah, and little Timmy, were always looking for adventure, and the allure of the forbidden was too much to resist. It was a crisp October afternoon, the time when the leaves were changing, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson. We'd promised to stay near the edge of the woods, but youthful curiosity is a powerful thing. The sight of the treehouse, nestled in the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, was the most magical thing we'd ever seen. "Guys, think of all the cool stuff we can do up there." Maddie was the de facto leader, his bright blue eyes always full of mischief. "Are you sure we should?" Sarah, ever the voice of reason, asked, her brown eyes flicking between us nervously. Timmy just clutched his teddy bear tighter, his tiny body trembling. Ignoring their reservations, I stepped forward. "Let's just check it out. We'll be back home before dinner." The climb was daunting, the wooden rungs creaking ominously under our weight. But when we finally scrambled inside, it was like entering another world. It wasn't the cozy den of childhood dreams we'd imagined. Instead, it was a stark, grim place, filled with strange symbols etched into the walls, dark stains on the wooden floor, and an unsettling stone altar in the center. "Guys, this doesn't look right," Sarah said, her voice a bare whisper. "What's all this stuff?" Maddie asked, poking at a pile of odd, bone-like trinkets. And then Timmy screamed. He was pointing at a corner, where a crude drawing depicted a monstrous figure, surrounded by smaller kneeling figures. Beneath the drawing were words, scrawled in a dark, rusty color, "The chosen must feed the silent one." We left the treehouse quickly, fear replacing our initial curiosity. We promised each other we'd never go back, and for a while, we kept that promise. But then, Timmy went missing. The town searched, but found nothing. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. We were devastated, but a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. The treehouse. One night, unable to bear the guilt and the uncertainty, I snuck out and returned to the Whispering Woods. What I saw there still haunts my dreams. The treehouse was glowing, a sickly green light pulsating from its windows. Hushed whispers echoed around the woods as cloaked figures shuffled into the treehouse. I hid, watching in horrified silence as the ritual unfolded. Their leader stood by the altar, a familiar teddy bear in his hands. "The Silent One demands. The chosen shall answer," he intoned, and the woods seemed to shiver in response. I ran, the image seared into my brain. The treehouse wasn't just a treehouse. It was a sacrificial altar, and we'd walked right into it. We'd given them their chosen. I told the others. We told our parents, the police, anyone who would listen. They didn't believe us, of course. They searched the woods and found nothing. The treehouse was gone, as if it never existed. All that remained was an empty clearing and the echo of our guilt. The town declared Timmy a lost cause, a heartbreaking mystery that would never be solved. The rest of us were sent to therapists, told we'd invented the whole thing as a way to cope with the trauma. But we knew the truth. Weeks turned into months, and then years. We grew up, but the shadows of our childhood lingered. We never spoke about Timmy or the treehouse, but it was always there, a silent specter haunting our lives. I eventually moved away for college, the need to escape Harvest Ridge overwhelming. But like all nightmares, it drew me back in. Maddie, the spark in his eyes long extinguished, called me late one night. "We found another one, another treehouse," he whispered, his voice trembling. "In another forest, on the other side of town." My heart sank. "Maddie, we can't go through that again. I think I saw Timmy," he said, and the line went dead. Coming back to Harvest Ridge was like walking into a ghost of my past, a snapshot of a time that was both innocent and horrifying. The town was still the same, save for the haunted looks in the eyes of those who remembered what had happened. And Maddie, he was still there, rooted in our shared past, unable to escape the shadow of the treehouse. As for Sarah, she had severed ties with us shortly after we burnt the original treehouse. The trauma of what had happened, the loss of Timmy, it was all too much for her. She moved overseas, seeking solace in distance and disconnection. Her absence was a palpable void, a missing piece in our fractured group. With the news of the second treehouse, I had tried to contact her, but my calls went unanswered. It was clear she wanted nothing to do with Harvest Ridge, or anything that reminded her of our shared past. I couldn't blame her. If I could have escaped it all, I would have. But Maddie was here, and I couldn't leave him to face it alone. The sight of the new treehouse sent shivers down my spine. It was an eerie mirror of the first one, nestled in the foreboding branches of an ancient tree. The silence around it was suffocating, the air heavy with an unseen dread. The pulsating glow of the symbols seemed more potent, more threatening. It was as if the treehouse was alive, breathing, waiting. We were no longer the naive, adventurous children who first discovered that cursed treehouse. We were adults now, forged and hardened by the fires of our past. Our hands, once used for climbing trees and playing catch, now held cans of gasoline and bags of salt. We had done our research, read up on rituals and ancient cults, anything that might give us an edge. This time, we weren't going to be victims. We were going to fight. We waited, hidden in the underbrush, our hearts pounding in sync with the ominous drumbeat that echoed from the treehouse. One by one, the cloaked figures emerged and disappeared into the night, leaving the eerie glow of the treehouse behind. Maddie was the first to move. He approached the treehouse with a grim determination, his jaw set and eyes hard. I followed, every fiber of my being screaming at me to turn back. But we had come too far. We had to end this. Stepping into the treehouse felt like stepping into a nightmare. The symbols, the altar, the heavy air of malevolence. It was all as we remembered. But in the corner, a small figure huddled. Timmy. He looked just as he did the day he disappeared. His clothes tattered and dirty, his teddy bear clutched tightly in his arms. But his eyes, they were different. They glowed with an ethereal light, as though some strange power had taken residence within him. When he saw us, he didn't cry or call for help. He merely pointed to a chilling message on the wall. The Silent One is fulfilled. The Chosen will return. With Timmy safely in our arms, we escaped the nightmarish treehouse. We poured gasoline around it, creating a perimeter with salt, before setting the entire place ablaze. We stood there, watching as the unholy monument to the Silent One was swallowed by angry flames. In the days that followed, we took Timmy to the hospital. He didn't speak or react, his glowing eyes the only sign of the otherworldly presence within him. His parents, overjoyed and terrified in equal measure, thanked us for bringing their son home. But we knew, deep down, that Timmy hadn't really come home. Not all of him. A month after Timmy's return, the hospital caught fire. It was a clear, calm night, with no sign of arson or electrical malfunction. Yet the building burnt to the ground, an eerily familiar sight for Maddie and me. We rushed to the hospital, hearts pounding with a dread we knew all too well. The fire was relentless, an inferno that resisted every attempt to quench it. It wasn't until dawn broke that the flames finally died down, leaving nothing but ash and ruin in their wake. They never found any bodies, not a single trace of the patients or staff. The entire town mourned, but Maddie and I shared a silent understanding. The hospital, the fire, the missing people. It was all too familiar. It felt like the treehouse, the Silent One, all over again. When we returned to the site of the burnt hospital, we found one thing intact amid the rubble. A small burnt teddy bear, Timmy's teddy bear, and scrawled in the ash beneath it was a chilling message. The Chosen has awakened. I hope you enjoyed our episode. All 3 stories were written and produced by Dean Smyth. You can find his personal Instagram account in the description below. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Leave your comments, share your thoughts, your theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners, and remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.